Hi, John.
Nancy Glass, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. So, 25 years ago, you had your exclusive interview with Jeffrey Dahmer. How did you get involved with Jeffrey Dahmer?
Well, when the story broke, I was sitting in a newsroom and you read it and you think, how is this even possible? And the first thing I did was reach out to his parents. And it took me about 2 years to land the interview, but we formed a relationship and there was trust. And then I wrote back and forth to Jeffrey, and finally he agreed that he wanted to talk.
When you actually did get to sit down with Jeffrey Dahmer and see him face to face and have a conversation, what was that like? And what was it like just seeing him and having that conversation face to face?
Well, what was odd was how normal he appeared. It would be a lot easier if he acted like Charles Manson. If he was acted like somebody who was insane and violent that you could spot 10 miles off. What is really unnerving is when you sit with somebody who can even make small talk when the camera is off and who acts like nothing is happening. And that's how you realize that's how he got away with it, that he could blend in. It was just like this mild-mannered guy who managed to blend in, take 17 men off the street, and nobody noticed.
And in your upcoming documentary, Dahmer on Dahmer, a lot of people in the documentary talk about the fact that he was a guy that just seemed like the average guy, and that's kind of how he got away with what he got away with.
Right.
Do you feel like when you had the conversation with him, he was being honest with you, or do you feel like that was just more of Jeffrey Dahmer being the guy that could lie to people and manipulate and get away with what he got away with?
That's a good question, John. Yeah, he used all the right words. He would say, I'm sorry for what I did. I should be punished for what I did. This was an impulse I couldn't control. I wished I could have controlled it. But he was a psychopath. And here's the other thing, John. You might have been able to have believed it a little bit if you hadn't looked at his other crimes. First of all, he could have been caught many times. He came so close to being stopped. He was arrested for exposing himself. He was arrested for molesting a 13-year-old boy. And every time he appeared in court with that very soft-spoken, gentle demeanor and said how sorry he was, how he would never do it again. The same thing that he said to me. And yet, he committed the worst kind of crimes imaginable.
And after your interview in prison, he was murdered.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts after going through everything you did with having the conversation with him and doing all the reporting when you did hear the news that he was murdered? What were the thoughts going through your head?
John, he wanted to die. I felt like he would do what he had to die. He told me that he stayed up all night and slept all day because he couldn't face the daylight. So something must have touched him in some way, maybe not in a way that would be satisfying to any of us, but something bothered him, and he just wanted to end it. So I wasn't at all surprised. He was beaten to death with a dumbbell, which ironically is how he killed his first victim.
And why do you think he did what he did?
Nobody really knows. He said he had evil impulses. It's something that I think people are still studying. I don't think anybody will ever have the answer to that.
And as I mentioned, you have the documentary coming out, a two-part series, Dahmer on Dahmer. After
on
25
Oxygen.
years,
Yeah.
Yep, on Oxygen. After 25 years of having this conversation with Jeffrey Dahmer, why make the documentary now and tell the people what they're going to see? I know you talked to the parents, which was really interesting. What are people going to see that's new here?
Well, John, first of all, 25 years later, two victims who have never spoken before came out. They were two servicemen who served with him overseas, who now say that he sexually assaulted them. Both of them kept that to themselves because 25 years ago, what were you going to say? I think we examine how it was possible all those years ago to get away with so much. I mean, at one point, he kidnapped this young boy, 14 years old. The boy escapes. He's out in the street bleeding. They call the police and say, there's a kid out there. His neighbors do. And the police are like, and he manages to convince the police, oh, it's a lover's quarrel. And they send the kid who's bleeding back into his house where he dies. So I think we examine how things were different. We examine how his death affected his parents, how he died, and what his life was like in prison. He said that he embraced religion and he felt he was forgiven. I'm not sure all of us would forgive him.
Yeah, he does at the end of the documentary, at the end of the interview, mention that he was a born again Christian. Do you believe that he truly repented and that was true, or do you feel like that was also a part of the manipulation?
Well, I think faith is something that moves so many people, but I think he was a psychopath. So I think he, again, knew how to use the right words, but I'm not sure that that he ever really felt that. His father felt it. His father said that he forgave him if the Lord forgave him. I'm not sure that everybody else would.
And you did also compare, like, 25 years ago, the culture and everything in society that was going on to how it is different today. But also today we have tragedies that are on a much bigger scale. I mean, Las Vegas, which just happened, in Texas.
Right.
And back when this happened, this was just such a groundbreaking story for everybody. But today, where does this rank? I mean, is this less of a story now if it happened today because of all the stories that seem to happen on a monthly or weekly basis now?
I don't think so, John, because these crimes were personal. This was one person at a time who he murdered brutally, who he dismembered, who he cannibalized, and even tried to turn people into zombies so they would stay with him. So his crimes will always be unique.
All right. Well, Nancy, thank you very much for being with us. Twin Cities, make sure you check out Dahmer on Dahmer. It's a 2-night special on Oxygen. Part 1 airs Saturday, November 11th, and Part 2 airs Sunday, November 12th at 6 p.m. Nancy, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, John.